Right now, Dragon's Dogma 2 has two different types of reviews. The first I have seen is the pre-release review, which are largely positive. Modern masterpiece, I played 100 hours, went like that, I could play 100 more, love the game. The second type of review has been the post-release backlash. The microtransactions, the performance issues, the anti-cheat, the single save file. And technically these two review types are actually speaking about different things. One is heavily focused on gameplay, and one is heavily focused on all the things that surround gameplay. Microtransactions, performance issues, will your PC get more than 30 frames per second? And of course, all of them are equally valid. However, I do think there is a gap at the moment for a more critical review of the gameplay. We have a critical review of the outside things, the performance, the anti-cheat, the microtransactions. We have very glowing positive reviews of the gameplay, but what about a critical review of the gameplay? And just to set the record straight, I have really enjoyed this game. I've spent I think I'm at 40 hours, something like that, playing it. I've unlocked all the vocations, except for Trickster. I've got a lot of the Meister skills. Had a really fun time in it, and I do recommend it if you're on PlayStation 5 or if you're watching this at a later date and it's fixed on PC or the PC performance is better. But I wanted to be a little bit more critical about the gameplay because I don't think it's perfect, and I do think there have been some missteps in certain areas, and I wanted to give you that information to try balance out the current landscape on YouTube for making a decision whether you should buy Dragon's Dogma 2. So the first thing I wanted to cover is camera angles. The camera angles are complete and utter garbage. For the first, 10 hours, I just felt like I was fighting the camera the entire time. I had to go into the menu and turn off like automatic camera tracking or whatever it was trying to do. There is, like, you probably know, there is no like lock-on, which I think compounds the issue. I'm fine with it not being a lock-on mechanic and you having to aim your character. Like, I'm all good with that. But goddamn, I felt like I was fighting this camera all the time. And when you're not fighting it, half the time you're like looking into the ground, especially on the Thief with like certain animations where you have like takedowns and stuff. And if you're like on a hill or in a cave, you're just looking at grass or something strange. The other thing that I found really infuriating with the camera is with the climbing mechanics. When you're climbing on a monster and you're like trying to get towards its head, I feel once again like you're just fighting the camera and it changes position and then all of a sudden you're crawling in the wrong direction. Now, there is an aspect of this that is like skill gap, and I will admit that as I got further in the game and unlocked more vocations, specifically the Mystic Spear Hand, which allows you to like teleport onto monsters and climb them. It allowed you to teleport onto their back or their head with much greater ease, and you didn't really have to fight as much. But I think the thing is, it feels like you're fighting the camera rather than fighting the monster. Like, I'm all good for if you try to climb from the leg, it's going to be much more difficult to get to the head of the monster and it's going to shake you off. What I don't really like is like if you're climbing on the leg, your camera just keeps spinning around all over the place and you either lose sight of your character or something happens. And I get it's hard because these monsters are freaking out and they're running around all over the place, but it is such a big part of the game to be like climbing on monsters, and it doesn't feel good until you unlock vocations that really put you on their head straight away or put you right onto their back straight away. And so yeah, I don't like the camera angle. Number one. The second critique of the game I had is the encumbrance system. I usually find with any of these systems or these RPG encumbrance systems, there are kind of two types. The first type is your weight is dictated by the gear that you put on. So if you got heavy armor, you know, you're a heavy character and you fat roll like you'll see in like Elden Ring. And the second type of system is like every little thing you pick up contributes to weight. And if you're overweight, if you're too heavy, you become over encumbered, you can't run or you can't move as quick, you can't jog as quick, and your stamina drains quicker, etc. I definitely prefer the former system where your weight is dictated by the armor and weapons you have on rather than picking up every little bit and piece. I felt like I was constantly managing my inventory, and there are a couple of things that like compound this issue. The first is when you collect loot off bodies, you can get materials, so you want to kind of check them. But you can also get stuff that you don't need. You might just pick up meat, and meat weighs a lot and is absolutely a pain in the butt, and I often don't need it. And the thing is, you can't preview the loot that's on something. You just kind of pick it up and it goes into your inventory. So you end up just picking up all this stuff. But some of it you actually need because there is a crafting system. And it does encourage you to hold on to items for a period of time because things do age, and meat's another example. Aged meat that's been sitting in your inventory for a little bit gets better and gives you different combinations of recipes. And even when it goes rotten, you get another combination of a recipe that allows you to make lantern oil. So the game kind of wants you to pick up all these crafting materials and hang on to them. And you don't get to preview stuff. So you end up just sort of like loot gobbling everything and then realizing you're over encumbered, and then you go into your inventory, you pass it off to your allies or your pawns, or you try to get back to town, then dump it all in the inn. And that's what I felt like I was doing constantly. And what also compounds this issue is the limited fast travel and the not having a mount, because you have to run everywhere. So it's always in your best interest to be as light as possible and to be managing your inventory and giving it to your other pawns. Of course, there are like some other systems that help out. There are pawns with specializations that can help you manage your loot. I did not find them very effective at doing this. Maybe they were just dog shit pawns, but I wasn't super impressed with the specialization to help you like balance your loot out so you didn't have to be constantly managing your inventory. But the fact that there's limited fast travel and no mount, and you have to run everywhere, and you use stamina outside of combat, I just found this whole system very tedious. I have no idea why it consumes stamina outside of combat. I actually think that single thing could almost solve most of my issues with Encumbrance if you just didn't lose stamina outside of combat. And I'm almost guaranteed that will be one of the #1 mods on PC, is to just allow you to run infinitely outside of combat. You don't have a horse or anything, so it's not. I don't get it. I don't think you should lose stamina outside of combat. Sure, inside combat, of course, that's part of the mechanics, but outside, you got limited fast travel and no mounts, and this encumbrance system which encourages you to pick up everything to craft. So yeah, give us some stamina. Overall, I think the way the encumbrance system works doesn't align with the crafting system, because you can craft all these potions, right? You can craft potions that deal with debilitations, negative status effects, and you kind of want them on you. Like if you come across a harpy, you can, have a potion that wakes you up, or you get stunned, you can have another potion. And there's all these things that you can do to get rid of these negative status effects. However, I never take them on me and never hold on to them because it increases my weight too much. So I end up just dropping them off at the inn and then never using them. And so I find that there is a mismatch between crafting items and the encumbrance system. And I think I would carry potions with me if that wasn't the case. On a similar topic of encumbrance, let's talk about fast travel, campsites, and map exploration. I read all the interviews with the game directors about limited fast travel and mounts, and I definitely understand the design philosophy of why they did it. And they explained that they wanted a densely packed map, an open world map that encouraged you to explore, and that things were just happening all the time, that you didn't feel like you wanted to be on a horse, right? You wanted to explore this world, and that it would be almost a waste to be on a horse, on a mount. These are their words, not mine. They also wanted the tension of the night-day cycle. So you're out exploring and you get caught up in side quests and goblin attacks and griffin attacks and this, that, and the other. The sun goes down, night comes up, and then all of a sudden you're dealing with a new set of enemies, and you just kind of all busted up, and you want to get to a campsite and get to an inn and rest and recover, because there is a loss gauge system for your health that you can only recover when you rest at a campsite or you rest at an inn. I completely get that, and it works really well when it works. I was actually tracking down the Mystic Archer early on in the game, and I went into an area that I probably shouldn't be in yet, and I just kind of hitchhiked on ox cart and got through this gate into like the desert area with the Beastren area and went straight to the Magic Archer, and that area was super tough for me. I ended up losing my pawns, and I made the mistake of putting my camp gear on one of my pawns, so I couldn't use a campsite. So all of a sudden I was stuck in this area. I had not gone to an inn yet, or in like 5 hours or something. And if you don't know how the save files work, you basically have like an automatic save, which is the same as your manual save, and you have like an inn save. Like when you stay in a town, you get a save there as well at the inn. And if it's been 5 hours since you rested at an inn, you're going to lose 5 hours of gameplay if you load that checkpoint. So for me, I was stuck in a high area. I lost all my pawns because I got absolutely clapped. I didn't have a campsite because one of my pawns was carrying it and he left because he got killed. And I was like fighting for my life, and I hadn't saved at an inn. I'm like, oh my God, I do not want to lose like 5 hours of progress in this area. That to me, I know some people won't like that. I actually loved it. I was like super excited. It was super entertaining. It was super stressful, and I enjoyed it. I definitely got the tension of the night-day cycle. I think one of the things that really took away from the tension of the night versus day cycle is how often you can use campsites. Campsites are like an infinite use, and they're kind of everywhere. And I never really felt that tension like, oh, I really need to find a campsite. There was always kind of one around. I could always set up camp. I could always avoid night if I wanted to, with the exception of making the mistake of putting my camping gear on a pawn who died. Once that happened, I never did it again, and I was always in a good spot. You don't lose campsites unless you are raided when you're resting. And if you, this happened because I was mucking around with one of the Magic Archer master skills, which takes all your health off, and I end up dying during a raid, and then my campsite got removed. I was like, oh, that's how you lose your campsite. Okay, it got destroyed. Actually, I don't know if it was me dying or it got destroyed. Either way, you can lose it, but I think it's actually pretty rare, and I think that wiped out a lot of the tension for me between the day-night cycle. I don't know how people would feel with a single-use campsite. I think people would find that annoying too, but all I know is I didn't really find the day-night cycle tension to be there because the campsites were so often and you didn't lose them for setting it up. I don't know what the solution is there, but yeah. And most of the time, or at least for the first 10 hours of gameplay, it's pretty enjoyable. It's pretty fun exploring, but once you've been through the same areas a couple times, you get a bit over it. You're like, man, I just want to fast travel. I just want to hand in this quest. Then someone else starts talking to you like, oh, I better do this because if I don't do this, this quest might fail. This NPC might be killed. Something else might happen. The game really does have that consequence in it, and it wants you to feel that. And I understand that design, but definitely I felt like after hour 30, I was kind of getting over it to the point where I wish I had more options for fast travel. Now, you can get port crystals, which is where you manually place like a teleport, and then you have to get a fairy stone, which allows you to teleport there, and they're an item that you have to find. I don't know if you would say they're super rare, but you do have to explore to find them. Like you have to go around and find chests with them in. You do get 3 fairy stones in one of the capital cities on the rooftops in chests, and often the roaming merchants will sell them for like 10,000 gold. So you definitely can get hold of them. But yeah, it is a limited fast travel system, and I think it gets a bit tiresome after a while. And I think the irony is other games have fast travel and mounts and achieved what the game directors wanted to achieve. And you know what I'm going to say? I'm going to say Elden Ring. Elden Ring is not a good comparison in many ways, specifically in regards to the combat. But I do think in regards to exploration, Elden Ring is a great comparison. Because if you think about what the game director said, is like, hey, it would be a waste to be on your horse. We want the game so densely packed. I found that Elden Ring did that for me. And I had a horse and I had fast travel. And every time I used those things, I was either getting off, exploring, finding something. Ooh, what's that? Ooh, what's that? Oh, that's a boss over there. What do I see in the distance? Like, it was a game that got me off my horse a lot because there was so much in the game to look at and explore. I don't think Dragon's Dogma is bad. I think it's above average in regards to an open world and exploration, but it's not, let's be honest, it's not Elden Ring level of density with things going on and variety in things going on as well. And so for me, I don't think the world was as dense as they wanted it to be for someone who has to run through the world with an encumbrance system, with stamina constantly draining. Like, I actually think the way it is now is probably perfect for having a mount, or it's probably perfect for having infinite stamina outside of combat. I actually think the density is probably at the right level for those things, and it's not quite at the right level for someone who's just running around with low stamina, who's overburdened. Right, so that was some pretty big issues with the game, like the camera angle, the encumbrance, and just sort of general fast travel exploration. Let's talk about some like smaller gripes. Enemy variants or enemy type variants. I found that the larger boss enemies, I think they're a good amount, from Griffin, Cyclops, Ogre, Chimera, Medusa, Drake, Golems, Minotaurs. They were all great, and I love the look of this game. The aesthetic of this game and how detailed the enemies look is just really cool. But I think the amount of smaller enemies is pretty lacking. I felt like I was literally just fighting goblins and hobgoblins, harpies and wolves during the day, and then zombies and skeletons at nighttime, which I often just skipped because there's campsites everywhere, and I guess bandits. So, and in each sort of moving towards different biomes, they were just kind of variants of those same enemies, and I do feel like there could have been more enemy types, more smaller enemy types. The last thing I will talk about is the pawn system. I think the pawn system is the most unique, fun, interesting aspect of this game. It's where you share your allies that you create with other real people in the world, even though it's a single player game. And it's very cool to have different builds in your pawns and find the right group composition. However, it is especially cool how they come back with knowledge. I think it's really cool with the way the quest system is set up, and if they've done a quest in a different world and with another player and they come back and they're like, hey, I know how to do this. You're like, all right, lead me the way. Like, that actually feels good. It's one of the few types of like backseating in a game that I actually enjoy. Because a lot of that like backseating in games is just super frustrating. Looking at you, God of War. But in this system, you kind of feel like you win when a pawn comes back with the quest. Like, I know how to exactly get there. You're like, hell yeah. So I love all that stuff. That being said, they are still thick as shit. Often getting stuck on the side of a cliff or throwing themselves off a cliff or getting killed. They talked up the pawns a lot, how they've improved since Dragon's Dogma 1, and maybe that's true. But there are still plenty of frustrating moments with pawns, plenty of goofiness with them as well. And the other big downside is they're not cross-platform, which is pretty disappointing. That if you're on PlayStation 5, you can't access... Sorry, if you're on PC and I'm on PS5, you can't access my pawn character. Giggity. And there you have it. There's my critical review of Dragon's Dogma 2 from someone who does recommend it, for someone who really has had a good time in the game and has spent a long time playing and has played a lot of the different vocations and would recommend it. They're the things that I think you should watch out for and see if the game is right for you. If you'd like to support the channel, can leave a comment. You can have the words Dragon's Dogma 2. As usual, it's been a pleasure. This is Myelin Games. Peace.